Meet Michelle. Michelle has IBD.
That stands for inflammatory bowel disease.
Ew, that sounds gross! IBD is found in people with compromised immune systems, or autoimmune disease. What's that mean? It means her body's immune system is super strong at some times, but weak at others. Michelle's immune system doesn't always fight infections like it's supposed to. Instead, it gets confused and produces antibodies that attack the body's own tissue.
Does it hurt?
In Michelle's case, this can be painful since she has IBD. IBD has several forms, including ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. There's so many big words and scary-sounding diseases. Let's break this down. It all starts with autoimmune disease. That's something Michelle was born with, and no one's quite sure why. About 50 million Americans have an autoimmune disease. There are about 80 different autoimmune diseases. One type is IBD, which is a broad term that includes many colon-related diseases, the most common of which are ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. Colitis is concentrated in the innermost lining of the large intestine and could be removed by a surgery called an ileostomy as a last resort. Crohn's, however, could infect the entire digestive tract, including the small intestine and even mouth. This makes it harder to remove with surgery. The patient would have to wear a pouch on the outside of the abdomen called an ileostomy bag that acts as an intestine and has to be emptied often. This can be embarrassing and inconvenient. Crohn's can even reoccur in other places of the digestive tract even after surgery. Medications are the same for both ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, but these medications are very expensive and come with dangerous or unwanted side effects. There is no known cure for either of these diseases. That means they're chronic, a lifelong burden. But Michelle, what happens to you when you get sick? When people with IBD get sick, it's called a flare. The colon becomes inflamed and sores called ulcers open up. They leak blood into the intestines and make it difficult or impossible for the body to break down and absorb nutrients from food. This can happen anywhere between every few years to every few months and can be caused by stress, certain foods, viral or bacterial illness, or at random. Symptoms include pain, nausea, internal bleeding, chronic diarrhea, weight loss, and fatigue. I don't like diarrhea. Yeah, when I'm sick, I go at least 20 times a day. In addition to taking medicine, most people with IBD must watch their diet strictly to avoid flares. Foods to be avoided include meat, dairy, raw fruits and vegetables, nuts, spicy foods, carbonation, caffeine, and wheat. I brought dinner! People with IBD also have to make time in their schedule to get x-rays, blood draws, and other tests every few months to monitor their inflammation levels. This is inconvenient and nerve-wracking for squeamish patients like Michelle. Approximately 1.4 million people in the U.S. are affected by IBD, and patients are typically diagnosed between the ages of 15 and 25. 1 in 10 patients are younger than 18 years of age. I was diagnosed with IBD when I was 15 years old. I was born with autoimmune disease, but that wasn't discovered until later as well. However, I showed external symptoms starting at a young age. I would get sick easily and get relatively rare illnesses. At the age of 10, I contracted scarlet fever. I've had rheumatic fever, mono, pertussis, and other diseases not commonly found in children. When I was 12, I developed arthritic symptoms in my ankle and began getting open sores and rashes on my legs. It wasn't until high school that they put the pieces together to diagnose me with IBD. I've had countless x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds, sigmoidoscopies, colonoscopies, and blood draws. It took 4 months and over 20 pounds of weight loss for the doctors to diagnose me in my freshman year. They said I had mild colitis and gave me a newly developed medication. 8 months later, I stopped the medication after they found inflammation in my liver. A year later, the drug was discontinued due to liver failure as a side effect. Insisting that I still only had mild to moderate colitis, I was transferred to a different medication. However, I was still in discomfort and had flares several times a year. During my last week of senior year in high school, I became extremely sick. Not only did I have a flare, but I had contracted a relatively rare bacterial infection called C. diff, which attacks your colon. It took 2 months to diagnose me, and another 2 months on antibiotics to heal. I was taken to the ER 3 times and hospitalized for a large portion of August that summer. I was in the bathroom constantly and in severe pain. I went from being 117 pounds to 101 pounds in 1 month. My body could no longer digest food because of my flare, and pills were also not being broken down. I became dehydrated and malnourished. I was put on an IV and given several different drugs for pain, as well as antibiotics and steroids. The side effects of each medication included to some degree anxiety, confusion, and disorientation. I was given a narcotic equivalent to morphine. One of the antibiotics made me lose feeling and mobility in my legs. It took several weeks after I was released from the hospital before the numbness subsided, and about a month before I had full mobility control. For my colonoscopies and sigmoidoscopies, I had to drink liters of laxatives while already going to the bathroom 20 times a day. I was throwing up and not eating for days. I also developed painful hemorrhoids because of this. While they had originally thought I had mild to moderate colitis, the doctors by this time were beginning to re-diagnose me with moderate to severe Crohn's. However, this could not be proven because the colonoscopy could not reach my small intestine because it was almost swollen shut. I am now on an infusion treatment, similar to a mild chemotherapy in broad terms. This is the strongest treatment available to IBD patients. Every few months, I have to go to the hospital and be hooked up to an IV to receive my medicine. It leaves you feeling sick and tired for several days and weakens your immune system further. Upon starting this drug, I noticed my hair falling out. By a month, I had significant hair loss. It was patchy and thin. Out of embarrassment and hopes to make my hair fuller again, I cut off 20 inches and donated to charity. While I am being stabilized by this treatment, it is not a cure, not even close to one. We must spread education and awareness of this painful chronic disease and fight for a cure, not just for me and for those infected, but for our children and the generations to come. No child should have to hear the word chronic.